The Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission, or COSO, is a private sector initiative formed by 5 key accounting and finance organizations: IACPA, IMA, AEA, IIA, and FEI. Established in response to fraud scandals of the 1970s and 1980s, COSO developed the Internal Control Integrated Framework, or ICIF, in 1992, providing guidance for preventing, detecting, and managing financial fraud. The framework gained prominence following major fraud cases like Enron and WorldCom, becoming a cornerstone for Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or XOX, compliance, which mandates robust internal controls for public companies. Updated in 2013, the COSO framework outlines 5 components and 17 principles for effective internal controls and risk management, serving as a foundation for modern fraud prevention and enterprise risk management, or ERM, initiatives.
The COSO internal control framework identified 5 interrelated components and are further broken down into 17 principles. All of these must be present and functioning effectively to have a sound internal control system. First, the control environment consists of 5 principles as shown in the presentation. The control environment refers to the entire culture of internal controls of an organization, which is established from top to down. This includes clear communication of ethical standards to all employees, including the implementing of code of conduct, ethics training, and the whistleblower policy to encourage the reporting of unethical behavior without fear of punishment. Second is the establishment of an audit committee, which is critical for providing oversight and ensuring management accountability. Third principle states the importance of a well defined organizational structure to ensure clarity in duties and responsibilities, which is critical for the successful operation of internal controls. Fourth principle emphasizes the necessity of hiring individuals who have the necessary abilities and qualifications to do their assigned task effectively. Lastly, under the control environment is establishing clear goals and performance indicators pertaining to internal controls to impose accountability. A system of reward and penalties will ensure employees' adherence to internal controls.
The next component is risk assessment and management. Risks are inherent in any task, including in business. This component requires periodic risk assessments based on the organization's internal control system. It should contain how an organization assesses risks to identify things that threaten the achievement of its objectives. COSO specifies 4 core principles for risk assessment and risk treatment. First of all, clear objectives should be established to serve as reference for identifying potential risks and their impact. These objectives should cover all areas of the organization, including strategic, operational, reporting, and compliance goals. The organization should also identify risks that could affect the achievement of its objectives. Identified risks should be analyzed through techniques such as SWOT and PESO to develop a risk treatment plan. The organization should always consider fraud when assessing risks. The same attention should be applied to any changes that can affect the organization's internal control. In this component, a risk register or inventory is recommended. It should contain the risk, its likelihood, its impact, its mitigation, and the persons responsible for that risk. The register should be updated as risks are discovered or mitigated. Consideration of these risk assessments and risk registers should be incorporated into the organization's decision-making process and align with the organization's risk tolerance.
COSO defines control activities as the policies and procedures that help ensure management directives are carried out. These activities are the practical steps organizations take to address risks identified during the risk assessment process, which are designed to ensure that necessary actions are taken to prevent or detect errors, fraud, and other irregularities. Control activities can be broadly categorized into several types: authorization and approvals. This involves specific approvals for certain types of transactions, such as expense in reimbursement, purchase requisitions, or changes to financial records. Verifications, which involves checking accuracy and validity of transactions and data like periodic asset counts to verify physical asset match recorded balances. Reconciliations involve comparing different sets of data to identify discrepancies. For example, comparing total cash balance with individual cash accounts on hand and in banks. Business performance reviews. This control compares actual performance against budgets, targets, or objectives that helps in identifying potential problems or areas for improvement. Access control, in which restricting access to sensitive information or systems to authorized individuals. And lastly, segregation of duties ensures that no single individual has complete control over a transaction or process by requiring multiple individuals to be involved in a different stages of a transaction. So the companies use control activities to manage and reduce risks that could prevent them from achieving their goals. These controls include technology-related controls that are specifically designed to protect the company's technology systems and data. The company should outline its control activities through policies and procedures that define how these controls should be implemented and maintained.
Effective compliance relies on timely and relevant communication. The COSO framework emphasizes number 1, quality data. Information must be relevant, accurate, and accessible to support decisions and manage risk. Second is internal communication. Share objectives and responsibilities across all levels of organization. Third is external communication, which engage with stakeholders like investors, regulators, and customers about key control matters, including data breaches. A strong communication plan simplifies compliance and ensures better risk management.
In monitoring activities, once implemented, an organization revisits its structures and process to ensure that they are effective in facilitating its ability to meet its sustainable business objectives. These reassessments may be scheduled and ongoing, or they may be performed as specific needs arise. As an organization reassesses its structures, policies, and procedures related to its sustainable business activities, it communicates its findings so that actors better align their activities with the organization's sustainable business objectives. The first step to effectively implement the COSO framework, organizations must first understand its relevance within their strategic roadmap and familiarize themselves with its 17 principles. A detailed planning process coupled with compliance management software is essential for establishing and maintaining a robust internal control system aligned with COSO's guidelines.
After planning, it's important to know how developed the company's internal controls are and what documentation exists to support its objectives and pillars. During this phase, the responsible team should gather all of the documentation available regarding the organization's internal controls and consider if ERM or enterprise risk management and suitable control activities are implemented. If the documentation available is insufficient to satisfy the organization's objectives and COSO requirements, this should be identified and addressed as a gap.
Remediation is a crucial aspect of effective internal control. It ensures that control weaknesses are addressed promptly and effectively, reducing the risk of financial misstatements, operational inefficiencies, compliance violation, and reputational damage. It is the process of assessing the quality of internal control performance over time by ongoing monitoring, a regular management and supervisory activities, as well as other actions personnel take in performing their duties. Separate evaluations, a more formal assessment conducted periodically to evaluate the effectiveness of internal controls, identifying deficiencies, which involves control gaps and breakdowns, in which instances where existing controls are not functioning as intended. Remediation actions. Once control deficiencies are identified, corrective actions are implemented, which involves developing and implementing new controls by creating new policies and procedures, strengthening existing controls by improving the effectiveness of existing controls to prevent future breakdowns, correcting errors or irregularities by addressing any errors that have occurred due to control weaknesses. Effective remediation is vital for maintaining strong internal controls and achieving organizational objectives.
The last step in the implementation of the COSO framework is testing and reporting. Testing involves evaluating the design, the operating effectiveness of internal controls, and the internal controls' impact on related risks. Management should receive regular reports on the internal controls and the result of testing. The COSO framework is heavily used by publicly traded companies and accounting and financial firms. It helps organizations to adhere to legal and ethical requirements while also focusing on risk assessment and management. Examples of industries that use the framework include financial services, technology, healthcare, energy, consumer products, industrial products, nonprofit, and the government.
Next up is our analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the COSO framework. So let's start from the strengths. On top of the list is the improved governance of an organization. A lot of organizations have failed because of the poor governance and oversight of business performance. One main goal of COSO is to improve corporate governance in companies that monitor security, risk, and compliance programs to make sure they follow rules, laws, and policies. Second is that it improved the risk assessments. Most of the time, people think that accidents happen because employees are careless, but in actuality, inadequate management controls are the primary cause of the majority of workplace incidents. The majority of these errors can be avoided by proactive efforts to implement effective risk assessments through the help of the COSO framework. This framework also enables organizations to have controls that first prevent fraud from occurring, detecting fraud as soon as it happens, and responds effectively to fraud incidents when they occur. Lastly, is significant cost savings. If organizations implement the COSO framework correctly, it will improve processes, establish more effective internal controls, and better management risk and compliance costs. Under weaknesses, we have identified two. On top of the list is the lack of guidance on implementation. While the COSO framework provides a comprehensive structure, it does not offer detailed guidance on implementing each component. A way to address this weakness is to seek supplementary resources such as implementation guides, industry specific frameworks, or professional guidance. Collaborating with internal and external stakeholders to share best practices and experiences can also bridge the gap between theory and practical implementation. Lastly is complexity. The complexity of the COSO framework can be a challenge, especially for smaller organizations with limited resources. To overcome this, organizations can adopt a phased approach focusing on key areas of risk and control first before gradually expanding and deepening their implementation. Organizations with limited resources may find it easier to successfully adopt the framework if they use technology and automation to streamline procedures and lessen the workload associated with manual controls.
The benefits of adopting the COSO framework are manifold in Deloitte. It provided a structured approach to governance and risk management that helped organizations clarify roles and responsibilities, ensure data accuracy, and enhance operational efficiency. Moreover, it promotes the integration of sustainability into the overall business strategy, ultimately supporting companies in becoming more resilient and responsive to market demands and compliance requirements. By leveraging the key components of the COSO framework, organizations can not only improve their sustainability reporting, but also solidify their long term commitment to sustainability and corporate responsibility.